Welcome back to BuffaloPlus.com and our YouTube page, Buffalo Plus. Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes. I am Jenna Cottrell. We're breaking down this Bills roster heading into this offseason period. We know it's going to be a busy one. And one of the position groups that we wanted to talk about early on is just linebacker. There's key guys that come to mind. Matt Milano, obviously going to be a free agent. Tremaine Edmunds will be under contract, but I feel like Milano has a lot to do with Tremaine Edmunds' play as well. Mike, what do the Bills do? Because Milano has had his injuries and issues staying on the field with things like that, but we know that the Bills defense is just better when he's out there.
All right, so this is our stay or go segment. I bring this up every podcast, every time we record. I need a little of Dan doing Romo when I talk about these linebackers because it's going to be.
I don't know, Mike. I don't know.
Because this is not normal circumstances, right? I mean, Milano has played more like a first-round pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Edmunds has been good. They love Edmunds. I don't know if you know this, but he's young.
He's only 22. Did you know that, Mike?
10 minutes. But the reason I bring that up is I think they're intertwined. And, yes, you could spread it out a little bit, but fans know. You know, Milano was not a first-round pick, so he's on a 4-year deal, so he's a free agent. Mm-hmm. And if he gets to that date in March, he's going to be gone because they're not going to be able to sign him. Do they want to sign him? And does this impact what they do in Edmunds? Or do they stick with Edmunds for a year and then move on from him? I think there's a lot going on there. And I throw out move on from Edmunds like it would be a simple decision. But there's a point, though, where that's going to be a big deal, you know, going into next year on the 5th-year option and everything else. So I'll start with Milano. I say he goes. I say they don't invest the money in him. If I'm saying it right now here in February, I say they don't invest the money in him because it's a lot. And you mentioned it, Jenna. He has a tough time staying on the field. The shame of it, Dan, is when he's on the field, the guy's really good.
Yeah, I want him to stay. I want him to be, play well in Buffalo. And I think he's a really good fit because I think, as I've said before on this, he's not the most valuable player. Like, he's not the most talented player on the Bills defense, but he may be the most important player on the Bills defense for what he does, for his versatility, especially where we talk about how good he is in coverage is exactly where Tremaine Edmunds is so bad. Like they're a really good yin and yang. And so I just don't see the Bills matching what some team will eventually give Milano. I just think a team that needs linebacker help will throw a lot of money at Milano, who has earned it. He has, Brandon Beane talked about that at his end of year thing, saying that, like, we want Matt back. Like, I've told him that. Like, I've said, we want you back. But he's also earned free agency. Like, I think that's also kind of like you're trying to read between the lines. It's like, hey, guys, like, I'm going to give him a decent offer. But, like, when somebody pays him $16 million, like, that's kind of out of our range, kind of thing.
I agree. And I think we actually did a story before the season started about Milano being that unsung type of hero, the underappreciated guy on the Bills defense. And I think you saw that this year we saw that stat floating around that the Bills only lost one game when Milano was in the lineup. And that was, of course, the AFC Championship. But I think also the piece of this we have to remember, too, is like from Milano's standpoint, I think he does want to be back with Buffalo. He said that before the season, but he's about to hit 27, and that's presumably where you can make a lot of money. You're nearing the back half of your career is kind of in the future. So you want to make as much money.
It's a big deal. Yeah. It's a big contract for him.
It's a big contract. And I'm sure he would like to be back with the Bills. But when you think of those financial reasonings as well, it's not just like, hey, I want to play on this team that's been, really fun to be a part of. There also has to be that financial factor of like, it's a finite window to make your money. And especially guys like Jordan Phillips and Shaq Lawson go out and get paid. And now, especially when the Bills are, every team's going to be handcuffed because of the salary cap.
It's a perfect example to use those two guys, because those, I think, were guys that would have liked to stay in Buffalo. I think they saw something being built. I think that the Bills wanted both of them back, but not at the price at what they got. And both of them got paid this offseason or last offseason.
They still got paid. The Dolphins are good in terms of Shaq, and the weather's nice. So there's a lot of good things going that way. And look, I think Matt Milano wants to stay, but I think he's going to want to get paid. And he's a linebacker.
Yeah.
You look at around the league, like a lot of linebackers, they come out, they're good, they get that second nice deal. And then after that, it becomes like 1 year deals or, 2 years, which is really it's hard.
Revolving doors.
Yes, it's hard to last that
1
long
year.
in this league.
Yeah.
And people look at them like running backs. They really do. Now, Dan emphasized, I think, an important part that he does have a unique skill set in being able to cover. And that's such an important attribute to have because the Bills need it. And, we say all that. Jenna, I think you just said the only game, that they lost when he played was the AFC Championship game. And even in that one, they got burned by the tight end. I mean, that has really hurt them. But it's a combination of guys doing that. I think when you have a guy with Milano's skill set, he can really help you in the modern NFL passing game defenses.
He can do everything. He really can. He can pressure. He can drop back into coverage. Like he made Tremaine Edmunds a better player too. Yeah.
But here we're saying all the things that he does well, and then we're saying that's part of the reason why I think we all think he's going to leave.
Yeah.
Because somebody's going to pay him. And Jenna, did you not find it interesting that Beane even mentioned the injuries in the end of the year news conference? Like it wasn't like us bringing it up. He brought it up.
Yeah. I mean, he did say and Matt would be the first one to tell you, but staying on the field, playing every game is something. And he did struggle with that throughout the season.
You mentioned it in the story you did. It's a litany of things that have caused him problems.
Yeah. Concussion, hamstring issues, torn pec.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
broken leg.
Yeah. I mean, he's only played one complete season in his career, which, that's tough because the injury rate in the NFL is 100%. But I think this year in particular, to have all of these injuries in a contract year just makes it that much tougher.
Yeah.
I could just see it for another team or another market, like in our job, seeing, I don't know, like a Jacksonville or some team throwing a lot of money and will write an article that will have all of the great things that he did. And they'll show clips of his interceptions. And the thing that always stood out to me was against the Rams this year, he covered Cooper Kupp out of the slot, which some corners can't even cover Cooper Kupp, and he was covering him. And they'll say all of these things. And then the last line of the article will be like, has only played 16 games once in his career. And it'll be like, he's also like, it'll be all the other things. Like, because we cover him, because we're constantly looking at the injury report, because we're involved in this team, we kind of have the rose-colored sunglasses are kind of off. That we can kind of see he's really good when he's on the field, but he's just not on the field enough. But I can just see him going somewhere else and being like, we've got this great guy. And then it's like, oh, by the way, he has had trouble staying on the field. And you're like, Jenna, that is part of it.
And Jenna, he retweeted Dan.
He did.
He's got a strong gift game.
Yes, that's very true.
Well, this is why I tied it to Edmunds, though.
Yeah. Well, because that's a huge decision about, Well, set that up. You can set that up.
Well, the only reason I say this is that's why the contracts are different. There's no contract issue with Edmunds right now, other than, it's funny because everybody's wound up about Josh and when they're going to sign him. Quarterback is the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decision contract-wise, right? Yeah. When you have a guy like Josh Allen. Yeah. And we've seen what's happened with the Eagles, what happened with the Rams, where you make that decision early.
Yeah.
And while it at the time seems like a good one, keeping in mind a lot of that money on the cap is still a few years away. Because I saw somebody was doing their own blog and talking about things, and they were like, you can't do it this year because the cap is down. Yeah, you can, because you're talking about now spreading that cap hit out. The reason it's hurting the Rams and the Eagles is one's traded their guy and the other's ready to trade him. Mm-hmm. You're not planning on doing that with Josh Allen. So now you go to Edmunds.
Well, they weren't either.
No, that's what I'm saying is that's why it's causing them a problem now, because they made a deal. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't sign Josh Allen now if you thought you were going to trade him in a year or 2 years. But my point on Edmunds is you let him play. You make your call on that 5th-year option, and look, we're saying this. They do love him, Dan. They make a lot of excuses for him, and he is talented, physically talented. So they may all be all in saying, Milano's going to walk. We're going to pick up the 5th-year option. We'll plan on signing this guy, and he's going to play 10 years for the Bills. I mean, he's going to be back.
So just like Milano and just like Edmunds and even some pieces on the offensive line and wide receivers, it's so funny. It's as we go and do these stay and goes, throughout the offseason, it's just not as simple as yes, this guy stays or no, this guy goes. That if you let Milano go, you can't just be sitting there looking in your cupboard going, what do we do now? Like you have to have a plan in place. And it was funny because one of the games Edmunds was out, Tyrell Dodson played pretty well. Like a lot of people talked like, wow, like look at this coverage. And he went sideline to sideline and made a couple tackles. And I had a friend text me and go, I can already see it now. You let Edmunds go or you let Milano go and Dodson fills in. And it was like, okay, like I'm not saying that's not a possibility. I'm just saying like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves of like if Tyrell Dodson is the answer. I'm not saying he is or he isn't, but I just one of these decisions where it's like, okay, if you're going to let somebody go and you're going to then, I saw Spot Track has Milano at about $14 million a year is what his average, salary is. Where else are you going to use that $14 million? If you only want him at 13, where else are you going to do? Are you going to get two guys that are $6.5 million? Or like what talent is that? So you kind of like that's Beane's job now is to figure out, okay, if this drops enough, where else am I picking up the slack?
I guess though my thing we talk about like Milano being gone, and while that is I think a lot of people's expectations and myself, like I feel like if he walks, then linebacker becomes a position of need. Like it's something where you're like trying to figure out what you're gonna do. Would they tag him, Mike?
They could. I think the only reason you do that is if you believe you are close on a deal and you believe you can work it out and it just isn't going to happen by the deadline, then you do it. I think the only way you can sign him is if you want to keep him, is in a multi-year deal that you can spread it out. Because if you actually had him play on the tag, the number's high, it all goes to next year's cap. That's why it's interesting using the cap now. You see like a guy like Dak Prescott, they're going to put the cap back on him again because that's what they've been doing. But keeping him on that cap this year with the number down on the franchise tag is tough because you can't spread it out. It's a 1-year deal on him. Yes, I think they could, but I don't think it gets to that. I think they'll know whether they're going to be able to make that deal or want to make that deal. And then the idea becomes, yes, you're right, Jenna. It's a position of need. But let's be honest. They invested in one guy there in Edmunds. And Milano was what, 5th round pick? Yep. These guys are supposed to fill in, and he just has played well. So when you look at positions of need in the NFL, it's D-line, it's pass rusher, it's secondary, and then it's linebacker. The Bills just happen to have a really good one. So
isn't the point to play devil's advocate? Like Beane and Sean McDermott talk so much about sign, draft, develop.
I was just going to say that you can't do it with everybody. Especially,
I know. I'm just being devil's advocate here.
No, I understand, but especially if you keep signing or drafting, developing them into Pro Bowlers, you just can't constantly have Pro Bowlers or guys that are going to make $14 million a year. Like not everybody can do it, and it's so funny. Jenna, you talked about how this year, if Milano walks, if we'll play that game, we've all kind of said he's going to go. That linebacker will be a position of need. Linebacker was a position of need this year. Like before the season, we looked at this and we said, without Lorenzo Alexander, we said like, boy, they're pretty thin at linebacker position. And then of course Milano goes out and it's AJ Klein. And then again, he was the worst player in Bills history for 3 weeks. And then he was the greatest player in Bills history for the following weeks. Like that's what I think they need to do. And Mike makes a good point of that comparison of a running back. Like you just aren't going to sign. How many linebackers get 4 or 5 year deals? It's just very few. It's Mike said it's 2 years. It's 3 year deals with options. It kind of works like that. Yeah.
You become the Nigel Bradhams of the world.
Yeah.
Right. Good player, played for the Bills, won the Super Bowl with the Eagles, and
you become an AJ Klein.
You become you become that kind of guy.
Panthers,
and look, I think AJ Klein will be okay for them next year. I think he's going to be playing a lot. I think he can play, but your resources will be spent elsewhere.
Right. Those are the type of guys that you find. You hope that you have your middle linebacker. They hope that's their guy.
They hope.
And then you kind of just,
hey, Dan, Settle down a second. Tremaine Edmunds is only 22 years old.
22 years old.
I mean, I know we like joke with that, but at what point can we stop putting stock in that? Because I feel like now he's going to be entering his 4th year in the NFL. Like there has to be a balance, because
there is.
I think of being 22 and the decision making that I had.
How long ago was that?
Speaking from experience to where it's at now, but
Jenna, I'm saying this in terms of your lifespan in the NFL is, for most guys is about 22 to about, even the guys who are really good, say 32, right? It's 10 years. That's incredible career to have. 22 is when you're just starting. I mean, Milano started with the Bills at 23, I think, when he came to the Bills. And I get it. But it is develop, and he's going into his 4th year. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying he can't get better, but I'm saying going into your 4th year, yes, he's young, but first of all, he's a monster. He just is. I mean, Tremaine is a great athlete, and it's not like he has to get, I guess he could get a little bigger, but I mean, he's physically, Dan, I don't look at Tremaine and go, man, this guy put on weight, or if this guy he's got all that. It's instincts, I think, has been the issue. I think it's like going forward, making those plays. I mean, even in the first game of the year, it was was it the Jets game when they gave up the long touchdown and he dove for the play and didn't make it? Like, that's what I have seen out of him. But again, the age thing, yes, I think it's now, Jenna, is when they're going to have to make decisions on him. Yeah. Then the age thing's going to go out the window, because it's going to be, oh, look at the number, year 4, 5-year deal. We picking this up. Are we committing to this guy longer term?
That's a huge decision too.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing we're talking about this year. Like, there is going to be a decision with Tremaine coming up that we could be having this stay or go with Tremaine Edmunds next year about more than $14 million, because the draft slotting and the way that he's played and he's performed, and we're sitting there, and do you want to sit here and play devil's advocate? I thought Beane was great. I thought the honesty that Beane had at his end of the year presser, saying, if we would have known a pandemic was going to hit and we would have known all this stuff, like, I may not have made some of the deals I made. Like, if you had that crystal ball, but but that's what Beane's got to be doing. He's got to be going, okay, if I do 14 million this year, if we do something like that, Tremaine's coming up. And we still have to get Josh's deal done. And I just paid Dion.
Yeah, I see what Jen is saying. Is like, is he? But I would say this. I do think it plays into their thinking. The biggest thing I think that plays into their thinking on Milano is the injuries and giving him the big money going forward. And then the next part with Tremaine is, I think they really do have faith that he is going to become very good. I mean, we joke about the age and all those things, but I think they believe he's going to be really good, and that they'll be signing him to that second deal, and they'll be happy to do it. Now, again, he's got to show that on the field, but you said it, Jenna, he's better on the field when he's had Milano next to him. Yeah. So I don't think that's going to happen this year.
Yeah. Well, we also know Tremaine did deal with that shoulder injury this season. And
he had a shoulder injury?
What'd you say?
He had a shoulder injury? I'm sorry. I never heard that mentioned.
I know. Well,
wow, that's salty today, Mike.
I know.
I'm just pointing out the things that they point out. Do they not?
No,
hey,
they do.
Patrick Mahomes' O-line didn't play well in the Super Bowl. Did you know that, Mike?
By the way, Greg Cosell went after him pretty good today.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he just said he was rushing out of the pocket. He missed some throws. He was playing too fast. Oh, I'm sorry. We can't criticize Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. Just please erase that part of this, because he played the greatest game for a quarterback who ever got 3 field goals in a Super Bowl in history.
That is true. And you think about, how good his performance. Remember when Brady lost to the Eagles and he threw for like 550 yards? It's like, I think he was a little bit better as a losing quarterback.
He stopped him once. Good thing it was at the end of the game. He stopped him one time.
Hey, and if we really want to get a narrative going here, guys, Patrick Mahomes, 8 quarters in the Super Bowl, has only played good in one of them. He only was really good in the 4th quarter against San Fran. He was pretty average through 3 quarters.
It was a good quarter to be good in, but yes.
Yeah.
Maybe he just can't play in the big game I'll get that narrative going.
Oh my God.
I am not salty on Edmunds. I'm pointing out that they look for, how about this? It's a phrase I've used with you guys before. Reasons, not excuses. They look for reasons that he wasn't playing as well.
They generally tend to protect their guys, though.
Not that much.
Ask Dawson Knox about that.
I think
his hair gets in his eyes. He's got too much hair. It's just a problem. It just is a problem.
You're so jealous.
No kidding.
Okay. All right. Well, let's continue down the list then, because AJ Klein, he's still going to be under contract. He's going to be 30 this upcoming season, getting older. Oh my God, how embarrassing. But like Dan said, I mean, it's pretty easy to say, like when he first was in the lineup, you're like, whoa, oof. But he really did figure it out. I feel like that Chargers game, the Seattle game, he played fantastic. Like, he's not great in coverage, but I feel like when they utilize him well and he's blitzing and getting pressure, like he does a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was a guy that took some time to learn the process and the systems. And like I said, I think when he was off was the time that the entire unit was struggling defensively. And then as he picked it up and the team got, better and better, he was a part of that, where he did filling in. He's shown versatility because, again, he was a middle linebacker. It was adjusted to playing outside linebacker. So that's another guy where I think he thought he was definitely going to be filling in for Edmunds more. And then when it came to Milano, whether he needs to cut weight a little bit and get to be a little bit quicker and agile, if he can work on that in the offseason, because they talked about, AJ Epinesa was a guy that got too big, that he gained too much weight, and that kind of affected him. Can you manipulate, Klein to kind of fit that role a little bit better? But I think he should be back. I think you need to have some continuity. I don't think you can come back with only 3 linebackers that know the system next year.
Yeah.
I think he's back. I think they like him as a player. Again, you're taking a step back. So this is what you do. In many circumstances, you let a guy like Milano walk. You sign a veteran like AJ Klein, sort of like they did with Lorenzo.
Yeah.
But, Lorenzo was really that third guy. But that's what they did with him. And then you draft a guy that maybe eventually gets that spot. Or maybe it's Terrell Dodson that moves up the ranks because you've got him for that year. I watched Klein. I thought, again, he's a guy much better going forward than backward. Mm-hmm. That's why I say Milano's skill set to be able to move, to run with fast players, to move backwards. He moves more like a safety out there than a linebacker.
He used to be a safety.
Yeah. So, that's where I think it's different. Now, AJ Klein, I think AJ Klein's got a little anger in him when he plays. Yeah. I think we saw that. He was a physical player.
He was.
He can get to the quarterback. Again, let's think of him in the Lorenzo role, and I think he was effective at times. I think they were happy with AJ Klein for the entirety of the season. But it'll look different next year if you don't have Milano on the roster.
Yes.
But it's funny because I look at, if we're just looking at Milano and Klein, Milano's more of the new age linebacker where they are almost a safety, where you're asking him and you can stay in your base defense kind of thing. And Klein's much more of that old school linebacker, like he should have a neck roll and wear like the breathe right strip. Like that's the kind of Klein that like he seems like. So to try and find that balance, because we talked about it. The Bills seem like they want to address the tight ends, this offseason because of what the NFL is.
Yep.
And if the NFL continues to go that way and shift that way, the Bills can't just keep having. You can't have 2 Tremaine Edmunds because they don't cover well. Like Tremaine doesn't cover well. Like you're going to need to find a problem was covering tight ends for the Bills. Linebackers, safeties, they have to be in charge of that. So what do they find? Again, a big safety and convert him during this offseason? Do they draft somebody like that?
Yeah.
Because again, that's where the NFL is going, and you try and get ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah. Yeah, completely. That's why we started this channel. You got to be ahead of it.
Why I thought of it.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. All right. Anything else on AJ Klein, Mike?
No, I think based on his contract, what he showed, I would be surprised if he's not. There's no reason for him to not be back.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get to Tyrell Dotson then. He signed, this is the final year of his rookie contract. He's 22. He's going to be 23. He played in 10 games with 2 starts. Yeah, I mean, and Dan, you mentioned earlier when he did fill in earlier in the season, it was like, okay, maybe there's something there.
Yeah, I think it was the Chiefs game where I thought he really kind of popped, where I thought he showed speed to go sideline to sideline. That you saw some, oh, hey, like this is kind of nice. But again, has had some injuries. I can't, not an all 22 guy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like this is where he fits into the scheme. I think he's been around now for 2 years, Jenna, in Buffalo.
Yeah, he had an off the field issue, I believe, when he first came to the Bills.
Yes.
And that's sort of been set aside. But we're talking about at the moment him playing. I do think he has physical ability to play. I think they've seen it. They trust him enough that when they need him, they can put him out there. But, this roster is going to be highly competitive in the offseason. They're going to bring people in. I'm sure there's a former Panther out there somewhere that can come in.
Has that well dried up?
I kind of think it has by now. I mean, I really do think it is.
Remember that time Jenna had a funny tweet about the draft and said, with the 7th overall pick, the Carolina Panthers select the future Buffalo Bill? That was funny, Jenna.
And then I got a lot of hate because people are like, oh, it's so obvious. It's like, okay, well, no one else made the joke. Salties. All right, so Tyrell Dotson staying. Let's go to Tyler Matakevich. He's in the final year of his 2-year deal. Obviously more of a special teams guy.
Oh, yeah. That's who he is.
Yeah.
They like him there.
They could save about he has a $3.7 million cap hit. They could save a little bit of money, but I think special teams was good this year. So why mess with it?
Yeah, he's the Taiwan Jones of the defense. Yeah. He could go out there and stand in a formation if you needed him to, but he's out there for punts and kickoffs.
Yeah. Former Temple Owl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I've heard.
But he again, second year of a deal. Yes, you can replace guys like this, but we always have to keep in mind when we say, well, if you get rid of them, this is what you save, but you got to replace the guy.
You got it.
Now you can always go younger and even cheaper. You can, but we also are realizing too that while they say we're starting over and everything, they know they're good. They're not going to get cheap over a little bit of money in these type of roster spots when there's guys they can trust there. And I think he's back.
See, I didn't know if that could be like a dark horse place where they save some money.
It could be if they draft somebody that they believe can step into that role. But it's believe they can do it with these weird off seasons and trusting that the guy can do it. But yeah, it is a place where honestly, Dan, I think you can learn a little bit as the season goes on as a special teams player. You put him out there and you see what he can do. Because there's always another one of those guys floating around at whatever point if you need to pick him up.
That is very true, Mike.
Yep.
All right, let's go into Andre Smith then. He's a restricted free agent. He's going to be 24.
Jenna, you say his name and Mike does the.
Yeah, I just think these kind of guys have a good chance. I mean, he's a restricted free agent. They'll put the tender offer out there for him. He'll come back and compete for a job in camp. That's what usually happens with a guy like that.
Yeah. I mean,
Andre Smith could be, again, like if you're talking about, he could be if he shows that he can be in special teams and he says, I'm committing myself this offseason to be doing that kind of stuff, he could replace Matakevich. But
yeah.
I mean, Matakevich, again, as I said when we did the running back portion, Beane has put some stock into special teams. Like he has gone out and spent some money on special teamers. Like he did it with Taiwan.
Matakevich is an example of that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And it was Roberts and, they even spent money, on Hauschka that they had a cut. So,
And usually what you see happen is good teams who avoid injury are able to keep those guys in their roles and they play. Bad teams or teams that have got a lot of guys nicked up have Tyler Matakevich playing linebacker in a game. Yeah. And that's not what he's there for. Or throwing passes to Taiwan Jones in the end zone like we talked about. Like that wasn't because they were bad. It was at the end of a game. But you know what I'm saying is those guys know their role. They do it. And maybe they get a few snaps in a blowout. But that's not what they're there for. So, I think he's back.
Yeah. All right. Darren Lee. unrestricted free agent. We know the Bills brought him in midway through the season after the injuries to Milano.
Didn't he just have a tweet? Did anybody see that? He had a tweet, and I know Bills fans were responding to it. I think he liked his limited time with the Bills. Like, I know he's a former Jets guy. I don't know if he's the kind of guy they decide they want to sign at a decent deal and bring him back, give him another look.
Yeah, he was a former Jet, and then he was a former Chief, and then he came and he was signed when AJ Klein was playing really, really bad, and it was like, holy cow, you can't get Darren Lee up to speed quick enough because he's a former first-round pick. If I'm not wrong,
That's
like he was a first-round pick by the Jets and had a lot of upside out of Ohio State, and again was another one of those speed guys. Was like, oh, this guy can cover. Like, he's fast. Like, this is what they need. And then he never saw the field.
Yeah.
As you guys find the tweet.
I don't see the tweet, Mike.
Well, he said good morning a lot to people.
He does say he watches the Maury show, which is hilarious.
Yeah. But I know some people reacted to something that he said. But, again, I don't know if he would be no, actually nothing. Actually nothing that I can find at all. But again, I think a lot is going to happen filling out this roster and bringing players in. That's why I said about running backs. You're going to have 90 guys. So let's sort it out.
Yeah. All right. I mean, the biggest decision this offseason will be on Milano. I think for the defense, it's Milano. On the offense, it's Feliciano. But there'll be plenty. I mean, I think I would like to see Milano back, but the portion of how much money are you going to spend is
it's tough.
What looms over everything.
Yeah.
You kind of have to set your cap. You have to set it and say, this is what we're going to offer you. We understand if you want to go out and test the open market, but we'll give you 12 and a half, or.
I don't think if it's that close, I think they could get it done. Mm-hmm. I think there's a number they have that if, but he's going to get offered. He's going to get offered money.
I think that there could be some friendly tampering, with whatever saying, hey, this team's, thinking about 15 and whether or not. And like I said, and like Jenna said, it's the most annoying thing that fans do is when they're like, oh, really going to take an extra $1 million? Like you want $1 million less. Like, what would you do? Like, like if he may love Buffalo, like you said, all these things. He may want to go and be the guy, maybe the linebacker at somewhere else where they build around that. Yeah,
100%.
Look, I turned down an extra $1 million to be with you two. So
when you were talking about you can always go younger and cheaper, I was like, oh boy, is he talking about me? You can always go younger and cheaper.
Well, at least we have somebody in the 20s on this podcast. So
that's right.
All right. On that note, let's wrap up here. All right. For Mike Catalana, for the old Mike Catalana, the almost old Dan Fetes, and I'm old as well. I'm Jenna Cottrell. All right. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be back with another position group later on. Another edition of Stay or Go. We'll have that coming up later on next week.